RPG A Day 2018, Day 18, What art inspires your game? Hi, Bat here, or rather my LARP character Stalik, sort of, without the face makeup. I thought I'd go on a bit of a journey for today's question. I originally actually sent this question in, but Dave Autocratic and Anthony Runeslinger did a great job of changing the questions and making them a little bit more open-ended. And of course the end result being that I was stumped. So I've started putting together a pie chart of indecision, and effectively decided that I'd need to do 360, if not more, entries into that pie chart. So that's kind of a daft thing. And then I decided, well, there's my original idea I'm still going to go with, but yeah, the journey, I'm now going to make it a little bit longer and a bit more interesting, hopefully those that are actually into art or into gaming history itself and other aspects. So, firstly, I don't be wearing this all the time. So the reason why I'm wearing a bit of LARP dress up is because the art, the fashion that you can get at live action roleplay, the level that people go to, particularly in a as an old mate from LARP, Matt Strange and Andy Heyman, mucked around with a thing called Authenticool, the idea of having very authentic kit for fantasy roleplay. You know, some people do take it a little bit far, but from my experience, the majority put a lot of effort in, and some of the things they come up with. So I kind of gave a friend of mine a proposal about wanting some sort of changeling inspired thing, and based on a bit of a knocker outfit that I saw years ago. That chap now runs White Star Clothing. He used to work at, well, he's gone solo now, but his previous job he worked at, he was doing lots and lots of things for the BBC and various theatre production in London, so he's doing very well. That kind of gives an idea of the calibre of some of the outfits that are out there. And so yeah, the art of people, everyday life, and that was kind of my original answer was going to be, I'm running a Mage 20 campaign, so 20th edition campaign, and it's set in Blackpool where I live, and it's very much sort of a grittier version, classic World of Darkness, you know, take it and make it a bit more, not edgelord because I don't like that sort of aspect, just a little bit more gritty, a bit more grimdark you could say. And like any places, there's a few rundown areas intermixed next door with, you know, some places that have had money spent on them and been done up. And I was collecting various street art, which I might post a few up on this video later. And it kind of, you know, the art of a campaign, what inspires you. So in my case, technically the answer would be where I live. That's kind of the easy answer for the current campaign, but not want to sort of miss the opportunity to go overboard and do a real RPG deep dive. So I started going through all the art of various games that I like, and you know, obviously that includes model painting as well, both for roleplay and wargaming, and again some stuff that I've actually done for art myself, painting up, like, you know, various things and putting them out there, and you get a bit of nice feedback. So I thought I'd start at the sort of technical beginning, would be things like obviously The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, the various books by Douglas Hill in regards to the Colsec Rebellion and Last Legionary. And there's kind of a theme throughout all of this, which again I'm hopefully not going to ramble on too long. You know, the locations of things, you know, most of these stories end up being on a journey, and fundamentally that's what we end up doing as well with roleplay. So here's a picture of some of the role-playing books that I'm going to be showing in a moment, but before that, here's another picture of some of the fiction books, the front covers of which I do appreciate them, but until Nerdwriter did a video a short bit ago, which I'll link in my blog, I didn't really think about the, you know, the history of front cover artwork and how there's a lot more depth than we might think. Mick Han did a great blog about this today as well. I'll also link that in my blog. And obviously graphic novels in particular, things like Sandman, The Invisibles, they stand out as being really impressive artwork that helps inspire the 90s when Sandman became a big thing with our local gaming group. Well, one of the many groups that I was in. One of the guys was collecting the Sandman comics, and that proved very helpful when I went on to running and playing both Mage and Changeling in particular, but also some of the Umbral Realms Probably my favourite fiction at the moment is by Ed Mcdonald, the Raven's Mark series, and these two front covers are just gorgeous. Somebody I know from LARP, so it's a little bit on the bias level because I've met the person. Gavin Smith, or I should say actually Gavin G. Smith, and his work, done a whole variety of different novels, some of which are a little bit different, but there's a lot of depth there and very interesting. Like this front cover picture to The War in Heaven, just spectacular, and again really helps set the scene. So I decided showing each individual book and everything was going to take too long, so here's the quicker version. Things that have really helped inspire over the years. ElfQuest, absolutely amazing comic series, worth checking out. Obviously going to the classics, Lord of the Rings, and of course the maps that Lord of the Rings had. And that kind of led me into the two sort of trains of thought. So besides the art of fashion, which of course we hopefully bring to the tabletop as well, things like, you know, Vampire became pretty successful partly because of the great artwork of, you know, some of the characters, and particularly Timothy Bradstreet's work, but all the artists I think in there, and you know, sort of more stylized aspects. All my old D&D, like Larry Elmore calendars, unfortunately have pretty much either been lost or got cut up and put onto the walls, and over the years have kind of degraded. So that really stuck out when I first started actually playing with war games was the Harlequins. This is 106 White Dwarf, so going back quite a few years. And that then got me thinking about when issue 127 came along and the Eldar were getting, you know, sort of worked out into an actual cohesive race with a bit of a background. It was kind of strange looking at some of the artwork in here because it wasn't particularly finished. Some of it was sketches. You know, that was kind of eye-opening that somehow this stuff would actually, you know, stuff like this, actually make it into a professional magazine, you know, but then it's that realization that this is a launching point, this is to inspire, something to, you know, add your own spin onto, which the early Games Workshop stuff was very much about. So the original Realms of Chaos, amazing stuff, very much open to, you know, your own working out. Then of course the thing that happened in the 90s with the collectible card games, and I went through a stage of using some of the artwork in the Magic cards as ideas for stories, which does link onto an important point later, the crazy stuff as well. Just the incredible artwork, that sort of, there we go. So, like, first edition Mage Screen, what the hell is that about? Well, apparently it's about everything, so that was pretty inspiring and gave all sorts of wacky ideas about what the game could be. And the kind of the inverse is true as well, because we've got the Street Fighter screen, and one of the crazy power games that I used to play with, again, he was fixated on, you know, well, it's great artwork, it's taken from the game, you know, so it can't really go wrong in that regards. And it's in full colour, back when role-playing was generally black and white, the books that is. And the question is, well, how can this game have such depth and richness? You know, the artwork might be rich and impressive, but the game can't possibly be. It doesn't make any sense. You get chi back from being honourable, etc. And of course, the hook being is, no, that's the point. Exactly what is going on with Shadowloo, and what is the metaphysics of the world. So again, metaphysics, commonality. So, talks about going on journeys. Nothing beats, I think, a good city book in regards to inspiring. We spent pretty much a summer playing Cyberpunk back at high school, 7-8 hours a day, occasionally 12 hours a day, pretty much every day. Of course, then you've got your dungeons and all the maps that go with that as well. So of course, you can't go wrong with there. Pendragon, well, you know, being a UK native, the maps and the pictures in here, you know, it's our history, but it's not, because of course it's mythological at that stage. The really impressive stuff of Dragonlance and Dark Sun, you know, can't go wrong with, again, the D&D box sets with all the inspiring maps that they do. Then we've got the interesting, simplistic, again, ideas of various maps and stuff from, the old vampire stuff from World of Darkness, so nothing innovative there, just in the case of a launch point. When Legend of the Five Rings came out, the incredible map that's in this is the old first edition version, and the map's changed quite a bit, which actually ironically is part of the setting. What exactly is the map of Rokugan and its neighbours is very much a part of their culture as to why the maps are inaccurate. So this kind of leads back on now to the sort of main point about inspiring. Legend of Five Rings D20 version, the effectively Legend of Five Rings Manual of the Planes, which leads on to my favourite thing entirely, which of course, first edition Manual of the Planes and the old planes themselves in this very simplistic little map setup. Obviously the later books do a much better visual job of inspiring. And so the commonality in all of this is it's about places that you can go to, and particularly somewhere that you wouldn't see in real life for me. The art that's of the exotic, the different, and the, you know, impossible, the crazy art that's out there. As a youth trying to work out what hell would look like, or hell on earth, so some of the old classic paintings that have been done, things like the Triumph of Death, Massacre of the Innocents, Saturn devouring his son, Dante and Virgil in hell, other classics like Caravaggio, I can't remember how to pronounce it now, sorry, sleep deprivation again. So these various pieces of art were very inspiring early on, and it kind of goes to show that although I didn't really think of myself as being an art fan for decades, as I've got a bit older and a bit more knowledge, you know, unsurprisingly we find out a bit more about ourselves and our tastes change. And it's like, oh yeah, I do like art, I do like spending a bit more time appreciating things and thinking about them in a bit more depth. And realising that from a role-playing point of view, the character art, which I really wasn't bothered about for a long time, other than saying, yeah, that's cool, and then we'd move on. Character art now is very useful to me in regards to, you know, hanging a plot hook onto a bit of a character arc, a little foible that the character might have, even down to the way that they're standing. You can start imagining parts about their personality, which I would never really apply to a real life person, but when it comes to art, it certainly proves to be helpful in regards to role playing.